Did you know? Decisions made by Sega for the Saturn actually helped both of Sega's competitors. When the Saturn was being developed, Sega of America president Tom Kalinske was concerned about the system's specs, and during this time 2 different companies offered to work with Sega to resolve their concerns. These were Silicon Graphics Incorporated, aka SGI, and Sony. Kalinske met with SGI founder Jim Clark, who pitched their new energy-efficient chips. Kalinske then presented these chips to Sega of Japan, who declined based on the cost and size of the chips. Although no deal was made, Kalinske appreciated the work SGI had done and suggested to Clark that he approach Nintendo with the chips. Nintendo ended up accepting SGI's offer, which helped them to create the Nintendo 64. When Sony approached Sega, they proposed a collaboration on a disc-based console. The 2 companies had a shared enemy in Nintendo, as Nintendo had spurned Sony by abruptly cancelling a deal for Sony to make a disc peripheral for the Super Nintendo. Sony's Ken Kutaragi and Sega's Tom Kalinske were enthusiastic about the team-up, but president of Sega Enterprises Hayao Nakayama was unimpressed. He declined the deal due to Sony's inexperience in the console market. Afterwards, Sony decided to enter the console race independently with the PlayStation. Sony also poached many of Sega's top staff, such as Kalinske's right-hand man, Steve Race, who would offer them valuable insights into Sega's strategies. If this wasn't bad enough, Kalinske was right to be anxious about the Saturn. Sega thought they'd have the late 1994 launch window all to themselves, but in November 1993, Sony announced they'd be launching the PlayStation around the same time. News of the PlayStation's impressive 3D graphics allegedly terrified Sega, and led to Nakayama demanding a second CPU to be added to the Saturn. This second CPU would be to boost the console's 2D and 3D capabilities so that it could compete with Sony. Such a huge upset so late in production led to doubts about the system making its launch date. Not only this, but the dual processors made the Saturn difficult to develop for. At the time, Sega had 2 consoles in development, one codenamed Jupiter and one codenamed Saturn. Jupiter was intended to be a cartridge-based alternative to the Saturn that shared many of the same specifications, but it was dropped to make way for yet another console project. A group of Sega employees attending CES in January 1994 were invited to a conference call with Nakayama. He demanded an immediate response to Atari's Jaguar, instructing the team to create an upgrade for the Genesis. The decision seemed to make sense, as delays looked likely for the Saturn and the Genesis was still performing well in America. This upgrade would come to be known as Mars and would eventually be released as the Sega 32X. In practice, however, the 32X only ended up hampering the Saturn's launch. The 2 consoles shared a lot of hardware, including their Hitachi SH2 processors. This led to shortages, with many of the chips intended for the 32X being used instead for the production of more Saturn consoles. Another problem was the launch window for the 2 consoles. The 32X launched in November 1994 in the West, the same month that the Saturn launched in Japan. This eroded goodwill towards Sega, with consumers wondering why they should buy the 32X when the Saturn's launch was imminent. In the words of ex-Sega employee Scott Bayless, "It made us look greedy and dumb to consumers." The move also confused developers, who had to choose between developing for the peripheral or for the Saturn. The US release of the Saturn was intended to be on Saturday, September 2nd, 1995, dubbed Saturn Day by Sega. However, they ended up launching much earlier, announcing a surprise release on May 11, the first day of E3. The Saturn had been performing well in Japan since its release in November 1994. Its advantages were clear. It had a roster of strong titles, with Virtua Fighter in particular being the most popular arcade game in Japan. It had also launched ahead of the PlayStation. Nakayama hoped to recreate the same ingredients for success in America and instructed Kalinske to announce the console's launch date. Kalinske opposed the decision, but was told he had no choice in the matter, so the announcement was made. Releasing the console so early gave magazines and retailers no time to publicize the launch, making it hard to advertise. Sega also had to choose only a few retailers to receive the console at first because of limited stock, which upset some of the other retailers. KB Toys in particular refused to stock the system in response. Many attribute the Saturn's poor performance to its lack of mainline Sonic platformer, such as the cancelled Sonic X-treme. The game had a tumultuous development. The project started at Sega Technical Institute as a side-scroller for the Genesis, but it was soon moved to the 32X under the working title Sonic Mars. When the 32X flopped, the team were told to shift their focus to the Saturn. The pressure was immense, and the team chewed through many members. They split into two groups, one to create the game's engine and levels on PC, and the other, known as Team Condor, to port the game directly onto the Saturn. The team quickly encountered issues with the 3D perspective, and to combat these issues, they employed a unique fisheye camera that would warp the playfield over a sphere, giving a greater field of view. Unfortunately, Nakayama was so displeased with their efforts that he took one look at the game before storming out of the building. He instructed them to rebuild the game around the boss engine, the only part he liked. Sega wanted the game to be released in Christmas 1996. To help meet this deadline, the team requested to use the engine and dev tools for Nights into Dreams programmed by Yuji Naka. Permission was granted and they began to familiarize themselves with the technology, but this precious time was ultimately wasted. Yuji Naka had not been consulted about the decision and was furious when he found out. Fueled by the rivalry between Sega of Japan and America, he threatened to quit if they continued using the engine. Despite all this scrambling, the team were miraculously able to find a foothold. Despite this, Sonic X-treme was officially cancelled almost as soon as they solidified their level creation tool. Designer Christian Sen believed that with the asset and working creation tools, he and programmer Ofer Alon could have finished the game by themselves in 6 to 12 weeks. The Saturn version of the game was handled by Chris Coffin, who was so dedicated to finishing the project that he cancelled his lease and moved his belongings into the office. Coffin almost drove himself into the ground, catching pneumonia as a result of his intense work schedule. To make up for the lack of Sonic, Sega tried out other mascots to fill the spot. This included real-time associate Bug, where a Hollywood acting insect accepts a film in which his girlfriend is kidnapped. Bug received generally positive reviews, but was heavily criticized for bringing nothing new to the genre, and attempted to copy Sonic's bad boy persona. The game was even praised by film director Steven Spielberg, who claimed, "This is the character that is going to do it for the Saturn." A Bug 2 was also released, but to far less favorable reviews and sales. Kalinski's disagreements with Sega Japan's policies also led to his departure in 1996. He was replaced by ex-Sony employee Bernie Stolar, who took a controversial stance on the Saturn. He infamously declared at E3 1997 that Saturn is not our future, and decided to reinforce quality over quantity. This meant holding back the localization of many Japanese games, particularly ones that were less likely to succeed in the Western market. The Saturn went through a number of models. A white model was released in Japan in 1996. The new color scheme, as well as the lowered price point, was intended to make the console appeal to women and children. Another unreleased Saturn model was discovered in 2013, codenamed Pluto. The console was posted on the Assembler Games forums by a user claiming to have worked at Sega. The Pluto included a built-in Netlink modem for online play. This episode of Did You Know Gaming is sponsored by Wix. Wix gives anyone the power to make websites quickly and for free, even if you have no experience with web design. They have a solution for everything, whether you want to embed videos, make an artist portfolio, or create a site for your business. Your website will always be safe, secure, and have reliable hosting with Wix. Their website creation system also has a drag-and-drop design toolbox that requires no knowledge of graphic design or programming, with hundreds of starting templates to choose from. Using these tools, even we were able to create our own Wix website in minutes, which enables us or anyone else to add a professional element to their YouTube channel. Wix is completely free to use, and upgrades can be purchased starting at just $5. To try out Wix for free, go to wix.com/go/dykg or click the link at the top of the description. Did you also know that the Sonic series didn't get past the first game's title screen without having a glitch? Or that Sonic Adventures Chao Garden had several easily exploitable glitches? For more facts, check out the last Did You Know Gaming episode on Sonic glitches, or you can also check out Did You Know Movies on its new home, Normal Boots.